Hello, friends. And today I decided to do a Saturday night stream. I think this is the first time I've ever streamed on a Saturday before, actually. And I decided to do something a little different with this stream. So generally when I go on a live stream, it's kind of like, here's something I know really well and I want to share with everybody and show you all the things that I've learned from all the hard knocks or whatever. But it's generally something that I know very well, right? I mean, even the HTML and CSS stuff I did last week, not a CSS expert, not a design expert, but I know the stuff well enough to obviously put something together in front of everyone. Today I decided to do something a little bit different. Today I'm going to do some virtualization on my Mac M1 with Parallels, and I have pretty much zero experience with Parallels. So it'll be a learning experience for both of us. So this is something that I don't know really well, but I want to try it out. If you follow me on Twitter, I've whined and sniveled about virtualization and how it's kind of weird. And there's a reason it's weird. And that, of course, is the M1 is an ARM processor. So basically, any software that's written directly for ARM processors runs great on it. Everything else runs through that layer where they're translating x86 to ARM stuff. And with virtualization, it's even another layer of complexity that makes things ridiculous. So right now you can run virtualization on the M1 with Parallels. They're using like a preview version that I've downloaded and installed. And you can use that to run ARM images, so which are also preview, by the way. So I have a preview image from Windows. It's a Windows 10 image. And I got it from the Windows Insider program. So if you're part of the Windows Insider program, you can get this ARM Windows and it's emulated. And we're going to try that out and run it on my M1 here. But and I downloaded a version of Ubuntu, which, as most people know, is not my favorite version of Linux. However, they do have an ARM version, and I'm pretty confident that it's a decent version. So we'll try that out. So nothing big or exciting. It's not going to be like groundbreaking, hey, check out all this cool stuff that I know about this. It's going to be a little more experimentation, but hey, it's Saturday night. If you don't have anything better to do, you can watch me struggle with this or struggle alongside me. So I'm going to fire it up. Oh, and check this out. So I've been working on my streaming setup. Got the cam that you're looking at right now. Then I've got a second cam, which obviously needs to be focused. There we go. So now we have two cams. So I can talk to this camera and in turn talk to this camera. And this is actually mostly for different kinds of production rather than streaming. But yeah, I got that set up and I got my favorite Sigma 16mm lens on both of these cameras, which I highly recommend for anybody streaming, especially if you're streaming with a Sony. They're the greatest lenses ever. They're not super cheap, but they're not super expensive either, so they're pretty cool. So here's my desktop. And I should probably see what that second cam looks like. Oh, okay, it's a little weird. And I'll fire up some music. I haven't done a ton of preparation for this time around. But, and I did try to install it. So I actually attempted to install something with Parallels. So I just purchased Parallels a couple weeks ago and I attempted to install something. I'm a little bit ADD, as anybody who knows me knows that, little ADD. So I started to work on installing it, things broke and I'm like, out. Haven't tried it, but I do have extensive experience with VMware, VirtualBox, things like that. A lot of experience with virtualization, just I've never really used Parallels before. And everybody who's really into Macs says that Parallels is the way to go, so I took their advice. Let's see if I can open up a chat window here so I can see the chat stuff. Actually, that's another screen that I recently added to my OBS. Let's see what that looks like. Check it out. Hello, Sly Raccoon 04 and William, who says black screen. So I don't know which one would be the black screen. All right, so let's get this thing fired up here. I'll bring up my chat window here in OBS, if I remember how to do that. I know it's in here somewhere. There we go. Okay, now I can see the restream chat. So, got Parallels fired up here. Let's see. And it gives you this little warning here about Macs with M1 chip. And basically it says, all of your existing virtual machines and ISOs and everything else that you've been using will not work on this computer. It's basically what that few paragraphs says here. So what's cool here that I noticed with Parallels also is you can download Ubuntu Linux, Fedora, Debian. Maybe I'll do that, or Kali even, would be kind of cool. But I have some stored here. So Debian is the one that I tried. This Debian Mini one did not work. And then I've got Windows 10. This one did not work because when I downloaded it, I didn't notice it said x64 right in the ISO name. But this one is the one that I got from the Windows Inside. I'll just call it Windows Insider Club. That's fine. Whoops. That should have worked. Let's try to get this thing going. I will primarily use Windows for productivity, software development, software testing, design, games only. I have no idea what this prompt is for. So I'm going to say software development, right? I'm a software developer and a geek, so maybe they will throw Visual Studio Code on there for me. Okay, name and location, Windows 10. Let's definitely do customized settings before installation, just because I want to take a look at that. So you see the Windows logo here with ARM64, and from what I understand, most of this is running under an emulation layer. So one of the things we might try to do is maybe download Geekbench or something and see how much overhead that emulation layer takes. But from what I understand of this, and I haven't done a ton of research, there isn't a bunch of specific ARM code in this version of Windows, as much as there's an emulation layer. Kind of like the Mac. You know, as I've been using this Mac, I've noticed that most everything runs under an emulation layer, so. Let's see, Windows 10, total size 9.82 gig. I think that seems really small for Windows, but change just allows me to change the type. Yeah, so I'm going to go through some of these options because I think 10 gig is far too small for any version of Windows. Sharing full screen. Hardware, there we go. How many processors should I use? For installation, I'm going to use 8. We're going to go ham with this. Memory, I'm also going to use 8 gig. Well, let me check really quick. Here's one of my only gripes about the Mac M1. I've been using it extensively. I've been doing a lot of development with it, and I think it's great, but the 16 gig memory limit is somewhat ridiculous. Right now, as I'm streaming with this one thing running, I've got a few things running here. I'll close these out. This is stuff from my course production earlier today. So we'll close a few things out and see how much memory we're using. Now we're only using 9 gig, but generally, and I've checked this activity monitor over and over as I've been developing, generally it's like 11 to 12 gig range all the time, if not 15, depending on what I'm running. And it just seems like I'm going really close to the physical limit. And if you've read up on these M1 Macs, you know that they have this soldered in SSD drive that gets thrashed, right? So the SSD drive gets just thrashed over and over. So a lot of concern out there is that as this thing's getting thrashed over and over, when that SSD drive fails, as they do after you thrash them, what are you supposed to do? you know, run from an external drive. I know what I'll do. I'll break out my soldering iron and pull that thing out of there, or I'll put an external drive on it and put Linux on it or something, but it's a valid concern. Okay, disk capacity here says 256 gig. So maybe we're going to be okay on the disk space. But I am going to pump up, as I pumped up the memory and CPU a little bit. Configure. I do not want full screen. Well, let's just hit continue and start installing Windows 10 on this thing. And I haven't really come up with a plan as to what we can do on this stream while it's sitting here spinning. I can figure out how to get that chat screen up, which usually it comes up. Very interesting, but I don't see it anywhere in here. I'm actually not really sure how long this is going to take. I'm going to put my full screen up here for chat. And we'll leave that there while this thing sits and loads and installs. Now generally, I've only installed Windows 10 about 256 million times. It's generally a pretty quick process, especially on today's processors. Even with a virtual machine, if I put a virtual machine up with like 4 cores on it and 8 gig of RAM, I can install Windows 10 in like 10 minutes or less. Right now, it is just sitting and spinning. But I'm hoping if this takes too long, I'm going to find something else to show on here. Oh, now it's starting to do something. I don't know what it's doing, but it's doing something. And I found that silly window that I was looking for the chat. Test it out. This Restream.io chat is pretty cool, but it doesn't bring in all of the chat windows, which makes it a little bit confusing sometimes. So installation assistant is coming up. That's where it's going to ask me if I want to enable Cortana and all these different things, which obviously not going to enable on a virtual machine. Let's check our resource monitor and see how that's doing. We're still at 9 gigs of RAM. That's not bad. Chrome is probably still the top process for CPU. We can see a logo. I see a Windows logo here on my Mac machine. And I now have no mouse, so it has captured my mouse. That's fantastic. And my mouse came back. Cool. I noticed something different about the Restream chat. Now the newest messages are at the top, which is kind of interesting. It did scroll in a descending order before. Now we're seeing a Windows screen. Now we're using 13.19 gigabytes of RAM. Yeah, it's really one of my only complaints with this machine. So I've done a lot of work on the Mac 1 M1 lately, and it's been pretty great. I mean, performance-wise, rendering-wise, I rendered a few videos for my courses with it, and it was okay. I've got a big Digital Storm machine that I do most of my coursework with, and it renders probably 10 times faster. But it renders okay. It runs Node and Go and all these different things that I've been working with. So it's done pretty well. My only complaint is that 16 gig of RAM. And I think with the M2, they're probably going to have the different memory addressing, I hope, to give it a little bit more memory, a little more juice. And I've found very few things that I cannot run on this particular Mac. Of course, VirtualBox being one of them. As I mentioned, VirtualBox and VMware. Can't run either of those on here. And this Parallels that I'm using is a preview version. I've never actually run Parallels on Mac on x86 before, but it seems to be a pretty neat little program. Installation Assistant. Installation complete. Ta-da! So as I'm looking at this, very cool. Let's check out the settings. Update this. Let's check out this OS build info while we're updating. So this is our OS info for Windows on ARM, and it's correctly identifying the processor, Apple Silicon, 8 processors, installed RAM, 4.47 gig, device ID. I can rename this. Let's get Geekbench on this thing, unless it's already installed. I notice I don't really want to sync all of my desktop settings with this thing. That's pretty cool. Windows PowerShell available. Azure Cloud Shell, Command Prompt, all of those things that you would kind of expect on a developer machine. Do we have VS Code? No. All right, I'll be just a second here. So right now, I didn't expect this thing to sync with my other Windows desktop. And there's a bunch of stuff on the desktop that I don't know if I want to show everybody on a stream, only because there could be some personally identifiable information in there. In fact, there's a screenshot of my ID on here. So let me get rid of some of that stuff. I didn't ask for my desktop to be synced, but I'm guessing that's kind of a default thing now. Pull these here. Got a PowerPoint presentation a friend sent me that he may not like it if everybody on the stream sees that. So nothing too crazy, but all right. So what should we try to do on Windows here? I'll answer some of these questions in chat. This is all right, so someone in YouTube chat just asked Go Air or Pro. 16 gig. This is a Mac Mini. So you can get the Mac Mini M1 in either 8 gig or 16 gig, 512 hard drive or 1 terabyte. So I got the 1 terabyte with 16 gig, which is about the best you can get right now. The M2 is coming, but I'm probably not going to spend the money on the M2 for quite a while. I'll probably get a used M2 at some point. So now we have a Windows install here. And one of the things I want to do is download Geekbench, and I just want to run a Geekbench test. It's going to run an x86 emulation. There's no way it's going to be anywhere near what it would run natively, but I just want to see how Geekbench runs. And I'm going to do Visual Studio Code. Because we can. We'll see if Geekbench even installs on here. I'm not even really sure it's going to install on Windows 10. I'm not sure any of this is going to work. Like I said, this is the first time for me also. So it is a little bit different than usual. So we'll run Geekbench 5. I'm going to, again, suspend my screen because I use the Pro version of Geekbench 5 and I want to put in my serial number in there. So go back to chat. There we go. I highly recommend, if you do benchmarks frequently, to spend the very small amount of money that Geekbench costs. And right now Geekbench is actually freezing, which is a little bit ironic. But that's all right. So I'll look for my Geekbench serial number. Where did I put? There it is. Enter license. All right, there we go. Now we're back with a unlocked version of Geekbench. Make things fair, I'm going to close everything except Geekbench here. That's pretty cool. Looks like it's going to let me do it. So let's watch it roll. No, compared, I believe I did a Geekbench on the M1 when I first purchased it back in January, so we'll just do a quick comparison and see how much we're losing by cutting those cores and running it through 15 different emulation layers. What I probably should have done is point that second camera that I have running over here. I probably should have pointed that at the M1 so you could see the steam coming out of it. That'd be kind of cool. So we're running text compression. And I really don't want to do anything else with my computer right now to try to give this a fair test. There's image compression, navigation. So I think one of the best things I could do with this is just try to install some stuff on here and see how well it works. So far, it looks like Windows. It's not activated yet, but I'll try activating it after this Geekbench. We'll see how that works. Checking all my stats. Looks like I'm pushing out to LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. So here's my sales pitch. Follow me on Twitch and watch me on Twitch. There's two reasons. One, I'm trying to become a Twitch affiliate. So this month I'm going to stream one day out of every week. I'm going to try to do 8 hours of streaming, come up with something cool. One of the things I have planned for the next week or possibly week after that is I want to do a full Jamstack thing, and I'm going to take Hugo, show you how to build it on your machine, show you how to build a theme for Hugo, and then we're going to deploy Hugo all over the place. We're talking like a static Linux server. We'll just take a Linux server, spin it up, throw Nginx on it with a reverse proxy. We'll do it old school, you know how they used to back in the day, and then we'll take it, we'll put it up on AWS, on Azure, on GCP, Netlify, Vercel, all of these different things. I'm just going to do like probably an hour every day or an hour or two just showing how to do all of that stuff, which kind of closely relates to the course I'm working on right now, which is deploying Vue sites in all of those locations. So all of this stuff is kind of fresh in my head right now, and I want to share it with you, some of the things I've learned getting beat up deploying Jamstack sites to the cloud. So subscribe to my channel on Twitch if you're interested in seeing any of that. Next month, I'm going to probably attack a Golang thing, and we're gonna do a bunch of Go stuff. And I've got a few projects in mind that I want to build up. I don't know if I'm going to be streaming that on the Pluralsight channel or on the Jeremy Morgan channel or what, but I'm going to do some Go stuff. We'll do some SQLite stuff, put together an app, that kind of thing. It'll be pretty fun. So subscribe to me on Twitch and watch my Twitch stuff. Twitch.tv/Jeremy Morgan. Smash that like button. Something like that. I'm never going to be one of those creators or influencers, content creators, all these different names they have, YouTubers, Twitchers, streamers. Never going to be one of those people that jumps around smashing televisions and doing crazy stuff. So one thing I'm noticing is this Geekbench test is taking quite a while to perform, so I don't think these scores are going to be great. And I don't even know Geekbench 5 metrics very well to do a good guess. I would say if this were Geekbench 4, we would be looking at around 1,000. Geekbench 5, I'm not sure. We're almost there, though. I'll post a link in the chat. Let's see how much Geekbench cost. It's been a while. I purchased it last year. All right, so it looks like they've got a couple different tiers. The one I'm using right now is Geekbench Pro, which is $99.99, but I don't remember paying that much for it. However, here's the reason you need to pay for Geekbench Pro if you're doing benchmarks like I am. So they have, I'll just bring this over here while it's doing this. So you can get Geekbench 5 for Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. If you're like me, I use all three of them all the time and I want to benchmark them. So you're already in $30 right there. This one says Geekbench 5, single user for all of those at $14.99. And then there's this Geekbench 5 Pro for $99.99. And let's see, let's find out what it offers. Oh, okay, the command line tools and stuff like that. So I would say for most people, just doing stuff like I'm doing right now, I'm running this Geekbench result. Oh, look at that, 992. If you're just running these from the GUI and things like that, then this $15 one should do just fine. But here you've got command line tools, standalone mode, which I've used standalone mode before. And I've used the command line ones because, like, when I first bought my digital store machine, I wanted to see what it would run like with no GUI or anything. So I have Arch Linux installed on there. I installed the kernel and the OS and just got it going, booted it up to a basic prompt, and then downloaded Geekbench to see, you know, what it would be without any GUI, any services. So let's compare this result here. This is 766 for the single core, 992 for the multi-core. It's actually not too bad. And it's showing Windows 10 Pro, 64-bit, 8 processors, 8 cores. Cool. So let's go ahead and upload this to my account, and then I'll compare it to the earlier result. Log in. See if I can remember my credentials for this. Oh, not that one. There we go. Yeah, we'll go ahead and save it. So we'll take this. We'll go look for that Mac 1, Windows VM, Mac Mini. Here we go. So this is native. So I ran this when I first purchased the Mac Mini before I put anything on it. This is, yep, back in January. There's the date. And it got a 1735, 7653 for the multi-core score. So running Windows 10 under all these different emulation layers, we lost a lot. So our multi-core score is actually lower than the single core score, which for what I do, actually the single core score is a little bit more important than multi-core. I don't do a ton of multi-threaded stuff on a day-to-day basis. Like if I'm just developing things, editing text, compiling it into code, that sort of thing. But yeah, we look at these performance numbers, they're quite a bit lower. So what's one that we really care about? Image compression, for instance. 1380 versus 845. So significant performance loss, that's what I would expect, but it's kind of nice to put it in numbers. Give it some discrete values of how much performance we lose running these emulation layers. Let's try to install Visual Studio Code. I don't want a complete setup. I don't care about that. I want to download Visual Studio Code. I thought I already did this, but maybe not. That's interesting. It says IA32. This probably will not work based on what this browser thinks my CPU is, but we'll see. Clearly, I clicked it too many times. All right, you're only open one time there, right? Okay, accept the agreement. Just going to click next through this thing. And we're going to install it for the IA32 architecture, apparently. Notice some icons up here. These are kind of cool. This is with parallels. Free up disk space. Share Mac camera with Windows. We're on a shared network. I can disconnect the ISO. Free up disk space. That's pretty cool. Let's launch VS Code. It's definitely slower than I'm used to, but it's all right. It's first time firing it up. Not a big deal. Cool. So we do have Visual Studio Code working here. And yeah, looks like it's using Chrome, Node.js. Very cool. Let's install an extension or something. Looks like everything's there that I expect to be there. So that's pretty cool. One of my favorite extensions that I install first is the theme. This is from John Papa. Winter is coming. There we go. We can search dark blue, light. Ouch. I usually go with dark blue. So this winter is coming theme is pretty sweet. Let's throw Golang on here real quick. See how that works. My favorite new language. I say new, but it's been a couple of years. So we'll download Go for Windows. Looks like I already clicked that once. Now this is not showing IA32, it's showing AMD 64. And remember, we are not on an AMD 64 processor right now. So we're going to have that emulation layer. Throw Node on here. 64-bit. We'll do Actually, let's do current. Let's get brave. I am super click happy over here, aren't I? So we'll get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Let's see how our Go installation's going. Go's still moving along, copying files. So far, I'm pretty happy with this Parallels. It hasn't thrown any wild errors at me. It doesn't seem to be incredibly slow. Let's see if Go's working. We'll open up that terminal again. I'll be darned. There it is. Very cool. So we have Go. Let's see. Sweet. So it looks like we can write Go on here. I'll definitely do more of that in the future. Let's see. How's our node download doing? I don't actually see it happening in here, so let's go to downloads. Empty. So I went to current, Windows installer. Did I cancel all of them? Oh, there it is right there. Probably just clicked a little too fast. Oh, I don't want chocolatey and all that. I've only got 10 gigs on this machine, if I remember correctly. All right, I'm going to jump out. I'm going to be right back. Cool. We're done. This would be kind of a similar thing here. A little terminal. Obviously not really extensive testing going on here. Just going to type in node and see if it breaks. Do I have NPM? I do not. So there's probably some pathing stuff that I need to set up. Let's check out our application here. We'll just open up a Node.js terminal. Oh, cool. Up and running. .help. Help me. Sweet. So we could reasonably assume Node and Go work on here. I could install a bunch of things, but I think I would probably bore everyone to tears. Next, I think we should try Ubuntu. But it looks like we have a nice little Windows install going here that seems to be running okay. Let's see how we're doing for resources. Since, I thought I selected more memory than 4 gig, but here we are with 4 gig of RAM. So this thing's like a Raspberry Pi, basically, which is kind of what I would expect. We're using that. Disk space. Oh, and I do have 256, so it wasn't 10 gig. I don't know why I saw that and just kind of assumed it's 256 gig. Just perfectly fine. And for our CPU, we can see it's handling things pretty well. So this is pretty cool. I'll jump back into this at some point and do some more Windows stuff. But for now, I'm just going to shut it down. Suspended. I don't really want to suspend it as much as I want to turn it off. So this might be kind of cool. And I need to install things like Photoshop and Real Visual Studio and all of this stuff to see. But this might actually be a decent way for me to do the Windows things that I need to do once in a while when I'm using my Mac M1, which isn't very often. Ooh, I don't want to update. I just want to shut down. I didn't even activate this version because I don't know if I'm going to keep it, but this might be cool for some of those very Windows-specific applications, like Markdown Monster is one, for instance, that only runs in Windows that is great. So, we've got these up. Let's go back to our control center. Now we have our Windows 10 there. How do we add another one? Probably the plus button. There's our warning about the M1 again. Let's go continue. This is the other one that I downloaded. Ubuntu Linux, live server, ARM64. And I see where I got that, where I thought that it was installing it or provisioning a 10 gigabyte hard drive. It's showing the disk space that will be used. This shows 5.26 gig. And Windows 10 was 10 gig. So let's go through some of this hardware and let's give this a little bit more. We'll go up to 4. Yeah, 4 is going to be cutting her kind of close. So we're just going to run this one at the same memory as the other one. Processors, I want 8 because I'm installing. And yeah, that'll be good. Let's start up Ubuntu Linux. And we want Ubuntu server. If everyone has any questions in chat, feel free to drop them in there. I'm checking something really quick. Okay, well, let's start the install. So we'll do English. Network connections. So there's like a local loopback and there's local connection and then bridged connection with other virtualization. And I'm not sure exactly how this one works. This looks like a bridged. No, this is not a bridge. This is more of a local, but that's fine. We're not going to have a proxy address. Send a text to my wife really quick. Which mirror do we want to use? We're going to use this one. We'll use the entire disk. LVM group, all of that looks great. We don't need to encrypt it. I'm probably not even going to keep this. Use entire disk. Okay, now it shows my summary here. We've got root, boot, boot EFI. All of this stuff looks pretty standard. Continue. My name. Whoa. Only lowercase. Okay. We'll call it Ubuntu box. Choose to install OpenSSH. Yes, just in case. I don't need to import any keys. These are popular snaps in server environments. So this is the server version, so we're not going to get a GUI or anything from this. I don't think I need any of these. Maybe micro K8s. Be kind of cool. Docker, sure, why not? There's our AWS CLI. I might use that. Postgres, sure. Let's let her roll. And one of the things from the chat here says, I believe there's been some good progress getting, I don't even know how to say it, QEMU working on Apple's new processors. I'm going to try that because that does sound interesting and cool. We'll just let this thing install and do its installing thing. And how long have we been running anyway? Have I bored people to tears yet? And I probably should have chose a different version of Ubuntu. Doesn't look like there's anything other than server available for ARM. Let's see. Desktop. Yeah, I don't see any desktop ARM version available yet. We'll do more of this. Might try to install Raspberry Pi or something on here. Failed mounting CD-ROM. We don't care. So for those of you watching who don't know what a CD-ROM is, old 720 megabyte or 740 megabyte file system we used to have ages ago, back in the Civil War, where we would install operating systems from. So it's always kind of funny to see CD-ROM now. That's where our ISO formats came from, even though most ISOs today would not fit on a CD-ROM, but they would fit on a DVD-ROM, which is another ancient technology. Come on. All right, we'll just close you. Close you out. Power it back on. So possibly one of the reasons it was asking for SSH is that that's how I'll have to configure it. Okay, and I've got a fire call coming in here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and jump off of the stream and go to a fire call. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we will pick up later and we will do this. We at least got through Windows, which is cool, and I will be back on later.